This is our Group 4's presentation on Brazil.
The three Hofstede dimensions with the most significant variance: power difference. Americans typically approach relationships with a less formal view of a power structure than Brazilians. Communication is informal in companies, and direct communication between workers and supervisors is expected. We cannot ignore the importance that hierarchy and relationship structures are in Brazil. Next, individualism. Brazil is a society with an extreme loyalty to families and communities. The American tendency to move from place to place and have relationships that form and reform as we move around or conditions change can be helpful in going into a new country, but only if we remain focused on the importance of forming relationships and being part of the community. Finally, uncertainty avoidance. Americans tend to be tolerant of new ideas or opinions. Freedom of expression is considered the right of all people. We are likely to enjoy the differences, but may have a difficult time understanding that others we work with may not be open to new ideas and our ways. We can prepare by understanding these dimensions. We should expect to need more time than we are used to as we gain trust before we make steps forward in doing business in Brazil.
The Hofstede cultural dimensions also inform how business will be conducted between different cultures. The greatest differences in business culture between the United States and Brazil are in areas of communications, disagreements, and scheduling, where it will be. Very important to be aware of context and communicating, being less confrontational and open flexibility in scheduling. Managers will need to adjust their expectations and interactions to accommodate how Brazil is more context-oriented and concerned about group interactions than individual actions. In addition, even though evaluating is close, the methods by which evaluations are delivered are very different. The United States tends to wrap negative evaluations in lots of positive feedback, thereby potentially leading a person to believe all is well when it is not. Brazilian evaluation is more likely to expect a person to realize what needs to improve without directly commenting on it.
The negotiating tactics Brazilians use are varied and quite different from the negotiating tactics used by people from the US. To start, there is more buildup to a negotiation. The culture of Brazil is generally more group focused than that of the US. There is much more emphasis on fitting in. This focus on fitting in is the reason why Brazilians establish strong relationships with their counterparts before negotiating. They will most likely expect you to value people and relationships more strongly than the business deal. Business relationships are not between companies, but between people. Negotiations will generally be long and slow, as Brazilians do not like to rush, nor people who rush. When negotiating, either ask to, if speaking in English, speak slowly and use shorter, easy to understand sentences. Remember that silence is a sign of embarrassment in the Brazilian culture. The Brazilians you are working with may use quite a lot of body language. It is not a good idea to copy this. Look for nonverbal communication, which will most likely be frequent. Keep eye contact more than used to in the United States. Brazilians will often bargain hard during negotiations. The end does not come quickly, and prices may move up to 40%. Leave room for concessions at each stage. During bargaining, intangible things such as power or status increase may be more attractive than more money.
The Brazilian government is made up of three branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. The executive is made up of the president and their cabinet. The legislative is made up of the National Congress, which is made up of the National Senate and the Chamber of Deputies. The judicial is made up of the Supreme Federal Court and the lower federal courts. Brazil is a federal presidential constitutional republic based on a representative democracy. The federal constitution is the main law and the framework for the government. Brazil has had quite a few interesting years when it comes to politics affecting the business environment. They have been unfavorable for business in the country, doubly so for international business people looking to do business in Brazil. The main issue has been the president of the country, Jair Bolsonaro. He has denied the effects of COVID, leading to many more deaths in his country than there would have been without him. Luckily, the other parts of the government were able to dampen his effects in the country. The president has also weakened environmental law, which has led to illegal deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. Police brutality is also a huge problem, with 6,357 people being killed by the police in 2019 alone. These issues lend poorly to international companies and people wanting to do business in and with the country. These recent developments would need to be fixed and amended to make the country look more attractive for business.
Brazil is ranked 133 out of 184 countries. Its EFI score is 53.3 compared to the world average of 69.5. It is clear Brazil has a low level of economic freedom. There are a lot of reasons for this. Instability in the Brazilian government is a huge factor to take into account when doing business in Brazil. Understanding that the government may work against you and influence the deals you make. It is important to follow all the rules the best you can, even as they shift and change within the governmental system. We recommend to seek out deals and opportunities that make use of Brazil's natural resources. Brazil is rich in both natural resources and culture. Tap into both to be successful in business in Brazil. Focus on building relationships with people and build your business through shared connections. Brazil is a country that supports its community members like family. You will want to join that community and it will take you far. Although the government will not be helpful if you follow the rules, it will likely not get in your way. Working with a company based in Brazil would likely be difficult considering its low level of economic freedom. If you learn to work within the cultural boundaries and customs, you will build strong relationships that will take you far in Brazil. Although they are not the wealthiest or economically free, it is ripe with potential and room for growth. There are obstacles in the way, such as the government that could interfere with business dealings. It is best to work within governmental rules and learn the customs. Brazil has a lot of natural resources and has the potential to be a good business partner.
Long and complex processes are a major challenge for Brazilian entrepreneurs. The main causes include a lack of coordination among the national and local agencies and an uneven and fragmented implementation of reform plans. Brazil ranks 124th in the World Bank's Global Report, which evaluates the ease of starting a business, processing permits, registering property, and paying taxes. On average, it takes 11 procedures and 119 working days to start a business in Brazil. Another thing that is complicated is their tax system. Tax compliant costs in Brazil is one of the highest. Contract enforcement is also very difficult because of the slow resolution by courts, and it takes an average of 850 days to enforce a contract in Brazil as opposed to 250 days in other European countries, according to the report given by OECD.
The status known as most favored nation is a status used by the World Trade Organization to point out the countries that treat all of the countries they trade with fairly and without discrimination. The country of Brazil is a member of the World Trade Organization. Because of this, its trade relationships with most countries are normalized and it does not legally discriminate against any other country. This is because of the most favored nation status that Brazil holds, as well as many other countries. If Brazil lowers a tariff for one country, it must lower that tariff for any other country that purchases the exports of the country. Generally, these relations between the countries in the World Trade Organization that have the most favored nation status are fairly good, though Brazil suffers from issues with quickly changing policy and taxation, and their legal system is quite backed up. Countries outside of the World Trade Organization would face these issues more intensely than those in it, making it very hard to do business with Brazil.
Brazil has been a top foreign direct investment destination for the last 10 years because of the ROI in that country. Brazil was the world's 6th largest destination for foreign direct investment in 2019, with inflow of 72 billion, according to UNCTAD. In Brazil, various laws and reforms were passed by the Congress to simplify regulations and establish norms for the protection of free enterprise and free exercise of economic activities, making their country attractive to foreign investors.
In the last 5 years, there has been a rise, but then a big fall in GDP. In 2020, there was a 4.1% GDP decline due to the unprecedented health, social, and economic challenge of the pandemic. With our business venture in mind, it would be better to see a rise showing incomes are going up and thus consumers purchasing more. However, it is estimated to go up again with both domestic and external, and a pickup in commodity prices expected to push GDP growth to 5.3% in 2021. Going along with the trend, we should expect to see an increase in GDP, which would be beneficial for our business plans. Another promising point about Brazil is that it is now one of the fastest growing economies on the planet. Brazil's inflation rate has risen dramatically in recent years. Currently, the inflation rate is around 12% and rose above 10% over the past year and a half. Inflation causes the value of money to decrease relative to the value of items. This means a business will have to manage the increase in the cost of goods and likely raise their prices as well. Brazil has a very high interest rate compared to other countries such as the USA. The current interest rate is around 12%. Over the past 5 years, there has been a drop in the rate and then a steep rise from 2021 to 2022. The interest rate rose about 10% within a year. This is likely due to the recent increase in the inflation rates. This is not good for any business in Brazil or working with Brazil. The interest rates are important for credit, loans, and price of goods overall. This will make doing business very difficult.
The exchange rate is affected by inflation. Brazil's historically high inflation has slowed over the last 15 years. When the global recession associated with COVID-19 hit, Brazil officially exited the recession at the end of 2021, when inflation remains high, which is affecting the real. The weakening real makes investment in the country an attractive possibility. When inflation is high, real property investment is a good idea. This would include agribusiness and methods of production. The exchange rate is also affected by political upheaval. The country is trying to eliminate corruption in the government by prosecuting even their highest officials. Interest rates tend to rise to combat inflation, and this continues to affect the exchange rate. Things to watch out for. If inflationary indicators continue to move further upward, we'll want to assess how much profit to move out of the country. If that case, forward contracts should be considered.
Water pollution is a big problem in many countries around the world. Brazil also suffers from water pollution, which can cause health issues. For the first product proposal, we chose to do a water filter. There are many different water filters out there, so there will be a lot of competition, but there is a high demand and need that will balance the market. We plan to focus on home water filters and portable handheld water filters to take anywhere like school or work. According to water.org, 1.2 million Brazilians are in need of safe drinking water. This problem is more in the rural areas. By producing water purifiers that are affordable, available, and durable, we can provide those people with clean drinking water in their homes. Our products serve the high demand for safe drinking water in homes. We are not only making a profit, but we will help solve the problem of lack of safe drinking water in areas affected.
As one of the top 4 food producing nations in the world, Brazil's agriculture is very important to the world. And since Brazil imports 80% of its fertilizer, most of it coming from Russia and Belarus, world events involving Russia will have a dramatic impact on Brazilian agriculture. Since February of 2022, imports have decreased dramatically, with prices rising equally dramatically. Many farmers will not be able to use as much fertilizer on their new crops, if it even can be produced. The mineralizer fertilizer from locally quarried rocks provide an alternative to imported fertilizer. We would propose to sell locally sourced fertilizer to all farmers at a substantial savings to imported fertilizers. There are currently few competitors in the market, and Brazil has recently changed its policies regarding the production and distribution of fertilizer. This is an excellent opportunity to improve Brazilian agriculture.
We have identified domestic companies that are potential competitors, but none of them sell a product like this or the individual spices needed to make it. They would be able to produce a similar product, but it would be a lagging response in order to overcome our temporary competitive advantage. Individual packets are available for import online and some specialty stores. These are not widely available or easy to find. A basic taco seasoning recipe uses ground cumin, salt, black pepper, ground paprika, coriander, garlic powder, onion powder, ground peppers, chili powder, and oregano. Each of these ingredients can be cultivated and processed inside Brazil. We propose farming and processing the spices ourselves. Sea salt is produced along the coastal plains and can be purchased directly without import fees. The food items used with this seasoning packet are widely available locally, and marketing campaigns will invite consumers to try an authentic Mexican dish.
Here are the references we used for our presentation, and thank you for listening.